Hello guys, Oscar Hotel 8 Sierra Tango November here from Survival Tech Nord. Today we're taking a look at a prototype antenna coming in from Chameleon Antenna. Chameleon calls this system the Tactical Delta Loop, but I hope they'll forgive us for considering it more of a portable Delta Loop. Now I've been out operating portable with this antenna several times over the past few weeks. So first of all, full disclosure, I hadn't had any experience at all with Delta Loop antennas. That being said, I approached this with a completely open mind. So join me in the solar-powered fill station, and I'll tell you all about it.
You are listening to the Emergency Broadcast Systems. This station broadcasts emergency news and official information on the air for assigned area.
From time to time, I'm asked to test out prototype gear from various manufacturers. This time, it's the TDL or Tactical Delta Loop from Chameleon. The TDL is a self-supporting inverted Delta Loop antenna, which can be deployed in either a Delta Loop configuration or a vertical configuration. The system consists of two 17-foot telescopic whips, a matching transformer, the 25-foot loop wire, the ground spike, and a 50-foot length of coaxial cable. To carry out testing with this system, I've actually put my own little Go Kit together. My Go Kit consists of the two 17-foot telescopic whips, the ground wire, the Chameleon Hybrid Micro, and of course the V coupling. For portable HF communications, I'm using the Xiegu G90. To power the Xiegu G90, I'm using the PowerFilm Lightsaber Max, and to carry everything in a nice portable package, I pack up everything in the Chameleon MPOS Molly backpack that came with the Chameleon MPOS 2.0. For testing, I decided to go ahead and deploy the entire solar-powered field station, but I used a little bit less power and a little bit less solar. Anyway, we've deployed in the bunker as a shelter, as well as deploying the titanium wood stove. So even with an air temperature just below freezing, we were relatively comfortable inside the shelter. So comfortable, in fact, we left one of the doors open for most of the time during this excursion. Now, we don't always have this level of comfort in the field, but when we do, it certainly makes it a lot easier to test the efficiency or the effectiveness of the systems we're testing. Alright, let's take a look at how the TDL goes together. So I've already installed the V coupling on a tripod. Normally it would be a spike, but the ground is frozen and I can't get the spike into the ground. After the V coupling, I installed the Chameleon Hybrid Micro and one of the 17-foot telescopic whips on top of that. Afterwards, I put the second 17-foot telescopic whip in the opposing side of the V coupling. Now I can unwind the loop wire and attach it to both ends of the telescopic whips. I found it easiest to attach both ends of the loop wire to the ends of the telescopic whips, but raise up only one telescopic whip at a time, and then the other. While we do that, I'll answer a question I'm pretty sure you're going to ask. Yes, this antenna can be set up by one person, and I did it all by myself. Because I hadn't had any experience with this antenna previously, and it's the only prototype, I wanted to be extra careful with it to ensure I wouldn't damage it before all of my tests were done. If I were going to give any advice for deploying in a windy situation like I am now, I would say put one of the antenna elements, the telescopic whips, into the wind. I found this to present the least amount of wind loading on the system when deploying on a windy day. I decided to use some counterweights under the tripod to offset the top heaviness of this antenna system. If I were using the spike as it's designed to, I wouldn't have had that problem, but again, the ground was frozen. So now we can take a look at the cap and the Tactical Delta Loop from the air. You can also see all those crazy ice fishermen out there on the sea. Alright, let's move on. I started off the day's testing using JS8 call on 40 meters. I'm very familiar with operating JS8 call on 40 meters. I know the stations who I normally hear and hear me. I'm also familiar with incoming and outgoing signal reports from those stations. This will make it easier to judge performance in this first impression. My initial reaction was, what the heck's going on with this antenna? The user guide says the tactical delta loop will show some directivity on 30 meters or above. What I learned on this first day out was the antenna system also shows a bit of directivity on 40 meters. So the initial incoming and outgoing signal reports were less than I expected because I was actually beaming in the wrong direction. Once I understood what was happening, I was able to adjust the azimuth of the antenna. After that, I started receiving the type of signal reports, incoming and outgoing, which were expected. Now, one other note on directivity. I did notice the stations which were in line with my azimuth exhibited higher signal reports, both incoming and outgoing. This is definitely something to keep in mind if you're ever deploying this antenna. Okay, before we move on, here's a look at the actual station. This is the Xiegu G90. I'm using the Mini Pro SC audio interface and a Raspberry Pi. I was running 18 watts for these tests, which seemed to be enough for Nvis communications, regional communications, and communications in Scandinavia and the continent. I also did some Nvis testing on ALE and cell call with the Ham Ring app on the Raspberry Pi. Nvis contacts and signal reports were actually much better than my home station. This came as some surprise, as did a contact with a station in Greenland on what should have been a Nvis antenna on 80 meters. One of the things I had to keep an eye on during this field test was the level of my battery. Normally I have the luxury of one of my big solar generators, but using a low power radio and the Power Film Lightsaber Max, I wasn't sure how long the battery would last under these conditions. After spending the entire day out in the field with this new configuration, I arrived home with about 60% left on the Power Film Lightsaber Max. Now, being out in the field isn't always about antenna testing or field communications, so this time it was actually really nice having some company out in the field during this testing. My wife and her sister's dog, Tathy, all came along to keep me company and grill some sausages on the wood stove while I was testing this antenna system out in the field. Now, usually I'm a lot further away, there's no car access, and I'm pretty much alone. I can honestly tell you, having family out there at the field station for this excursion made it a lot more fun and the time went by a lot faster. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to give it a thumbs up and please subscribe. You might also leave a comment thanking my wife for keeping me happy out in the field station. So I can tell you, we all really enjoyed those sausages, and even Tathy got one. And this is actually one of the benefits of having a hot tent with a wood stove. You can do all that cooking inside the tent, plus you stay warm and comfortable in the field station during all the testing. Someone left a comment on one of my Instagram posts the other day saying everything tastes better when you're camping. I couldn't agree more. So one other goal I had for this testing was to compare the performance of the vertical configuration with the Delta Loop. For this, I laid out the ground wires and then installed one of the 17-foot telescopic whips on top of the hybrid micro. Now, this test was done a few days later, closer to spring, so I was able to use a spike in my garden and get that down in the ground to use it as a base. Once I had the counterpoise wire laid out, the hybrid micro in the base, I raised the 17-foot telescopic whip section by section until it was completely raised. Raising the antenna was effortless, and it was actually quite rigid once it was in a vertical configuration. Now, honestly, I don't know if Chameleon is going to sell this telescopic whip as a standalone product, but in my opinion, they should definitely do so. I think the telescopic whip would be quite a hit with operators. Now, don't be afraid of this whipping around. This is actually a time-lapse video, and it was very windy. Regardless, it gives you a pretty good look of what the vertical configuration looks like once it's deployed. I think one of the tests we'll need to make in an upcoming video is adjusting the length of this telescopic whip to get to resonant antenna on a specific band. What do you all think about that idea? So now we're comparing the Delta Loop configuration to the vertical configuration, and in the Delta Loop configuration you can see that I have a lot higher concentration of near-field stations, or stations in or around Scandinavia. But reception inside Scandinavia, EU, and around the world was also quite prevalent. In a vertical configuration, that first skip zone was very apparent. I lost almost all of the NVIS range stations in Scandinavia and the Baltic. The only exception to this were stations within ground wave range on higher bands. Now, I think it shouldn't come as any surprise we could hear a lot more stations with a ground-mounted vertical configuration than we could with the delta loop configuration. So far, it seems to do what they say it's supposed to do. That's definitely a good start. Okay, here's my thoughts on the tactical delta loop. Definitely someone's going to say in the comments you could build this type of antenna yourself, and that's absolutely true. A matching transformer, a couple of telescopic poles, and some lightweight wire, and you'd be in business. Now even so, that wouldn't be this. If you're anything like me, I'm not the type of guy who likes fiddling around with things once I get out in the field. When I'm out in the field, I need my equipment to simply work. Now, it's been a while since I've asked anything like this, but I want you all to get involved. If you're watching this video on YouTube, I'd like you to sign in and cast your vote at the poll located at the end of this video. There's going to be 3 options there. It's a gimmick, it needs more work, or you think it's outstanding. And as usual, add some context to the comments. The only thing I ask is that you'll be polite. I'll also try to get Chameleon Antenna to chime in on the comments. That's always a good thing. Rock and roll, guys, and remember, stay motivated. If you're supporting this channel through Patreon, PayPal, or simply sharing my content, you're absolutely magnificent, and I couldn't do it without you. For the rest of you, if you like what I'm doing, if you like the content I'm creating, leave me a comment and a thumbs up to let me know. And if it's not too much to ask, please share this video with someone or someplace where other operators might enjoy it. Rock and roll, guys. Thanks for watching. Ciao.